In the heart of a sun-drenched summer park, a once promising black swimmer, now grappling with poverty, trained in solitary devotion by the lake's edge. His quiet regimen was shattered when two young girls, momentarily unsupervised by their father, tumbled into the treacherous water. Without a second's hesitation he plunged in, battling a searing leg cramp that nearly claimed his own life. This profound act of self-sacrifice brought the girl's father, a wealthy CEO whose perception had been clouded by prejudice, to tears. In that moment of shared humanity, the CEO extended a lifeline, offering the swimmer the chance to reclaim the dream the world had so cruelly snatched away. Before we delve deeper into this incredible narrative, tell us where you're tuning in from. We genuinely value your insights. It was a radiant Missouri afternoon, thick with the embrace of summer, the kind of heat that clung to your skin, and the joyous symphony of children's laughter echoing across the expansive park. The public space teemed with life, families sprawled on picnic blankets, kids energetically kicking soccer balls, and the persistent hum of cicadas in the trees. Near the lake, its surface shimmering like polished glass under the sun, a few individuals sought refuge under umbrellas, maintaining a cautious distance from the water's edge. Most people avoided the lake not due to the oppressive heat, but because of Travis Bennett, 22, who was once again there, solitary as ever. Travis was tall and broad-shouldered, a physique seemingly sculpted for speed and power. His dark skin glistened under the sun, sweat tracing the sharp contours of his jaw and collarbone. Dressed simply in a gray tank top and black athletic shorts, now darkened by exertion, he appeared from afar like any other dedicated athlete. Yet the wary glances he received told a different story. Parents whispered as he passed. One mother swiftly pulled her son away, muttering audibly, "I just don't feel safe when he's around the kids." Travis, however, remained impassive as always. He jogged silently to the pull-up bar by the lake and commenced his routine. 1, 3. The strain in his arms was not solely from his body's weight, but from the crushing burden of memories he couldn't simply sweat away. Years prior, this very park had been his sanctuary, his training ground when he was a rising star in Missouri's swim circuit, a genuine prodigy. But then the scholarships evaporated, bills mounted, and his father fell ill, forcing Travis to abandon everything to care for the only man who had ever truly believed in him. Mid-pull-up, Travis spotted a young white man nearby setting up a picnic blanket with two small girls, identical twins with matching pigtails and sun hats. They darted towards the water, giggling, chasing a bright red ball, their laughter chiming like bells through the park's ambient noise. For a fleeting moment Travis froze, his chest tightening. The way one of the girls reached up and tugged her father's sleeve struck a chord, reminding him of himself and his own dad, before the cancer, before the funeral, before the overwhelming silence. He dropped from the bar, hands on his knees, and simply watched. The father glanced over, his eyes narrowing. Travis offered a slight, polite nod. The man said nothing, merely stood up, grabbed the picnic bag and called to his daughters, "Let's go, we're not staying here." One of the girls pouted. "But Daddy." "I said now," he snapped, not looking back as they walked away. Travis remained still, gazing out at the lake. His reflection, blurred and solitary, stared back. Around him the world continued, but within him, something quietly fractured. The air shifted almost imperceptibly, a subtle drop in temperature, a breeze rustling the treetops like a whispered warning. Travis wiped sweat from his brow and circled the lake's perimeter, allowing his heartbeat to steady after his intense pull-ups. His legs ached with that satisfying fatigue, the kind that made him feel alive, like he still had a place in the world, not just discarded talent left to rust in the shadows. The distant hum of the park continued behind him, unfocused, but something else pierced through it. A soft thump, roll, splash. A sound small enough to ignore had Travis's ears not been meticulously trained for years to detect every subtle change, every drop, every ripple in water. His eyes darted to the lake's surface. A red ball floated idly, nudging the ripples like a forgotten toy. His chest tightened. It was the same ball the little girls had been playing with. He quickly scanned the patch of grass where they had been, empty. The picnic blanket gone. The father nowhere in sight. A prickle of worry ran down his spine. He took a few steps closer to the shoreline, his eyes narrowing. That's when he saw them. Two small shapes in the water, not floating but struggling. arms flailing, tiny heads bobbing before disappearing again. No sound, no screaming, just water, cold and merciless. Travis's body reacted before his mind could fully grasp the horror. "Oh no, oh my God," he gasped, already kicking off his sneakers. His hands trembled as he yanked his shirt over his head and sprinted towards the water's edge. Hold on, he shouted, desperate for them to hear him, though the girls were already sinking. He dove. The lake was impossibly cold, the kind of cold that gnawed at your bones and seized your muscles. On pure instinct, he forced his arms to slice through the water, kicking with strength honed over years. His eyes scoured the depths as he swam, a flash of pink fabric, then another, a small leg twisting in panic. He reached the first girl in seconds, pulling her up under the arms. She coughed violently, mouth agape in silent shock, but she was breathing. The second girl had drifted further, deeper. Travis took one desperate gulp of air and dove again, reaching for her as his lungs screamed for release. He caught her wrist, pulling her up, too light, too limp, and broke the surface with both girls clutched in his arms. "Help!" he cried, true panic blooming now, sharp and undeniable. Not a soul was close enough. The shore seemed impossibly far. His legs kicked furiously, but the water felt thick, heavy. The cold had settled into his thighs, creeping up his back. He winced as his left calf seized tight. Cramp. A bad one. His leg jerked. Pain lanced through him. He nearly dropped one of the girls. "Don't panic," he told himself, gritting his teeth. He had to keep them up. That was all that mattered. Keep them above the water, keep them breathing. He locked both arms around their chests and forced his body upright, letting himself sink slightly while holding them high. His chin dipped below the surface, but he thrust his arms upward, palms under their backs, keeping their mouths above the water. The younger one whimpered weakly, the other cried. Travis's body screamed for oxygen, for rest, but he refused to let go. His mind raced. "You've done harder things. You've swam harder. You've raced against the best. But nothing felt like this." The water wasn't a track, it was a crushing weight. He couldn't kick anymore. The cramp had seized both legs now, locking him in place. "God, not now. Not like this." He tried to tilt his head back for air, but a wave slapped his face. His lips sputtered. He coughed, swallowing lake water, his vision blurring. He forced one more desperate push upward, the last reserves of his strength, just enough to ensure the girls stayed above the surface. "Someone," he gasped. "Help. Please." The sound was broken, half muffled by water. Then a new sound, a voice. Hey, over there." It came from the trail winding around the lake. A man running. Another voice, sharper, urgent. "Cole. 911. 2 kids. He's holding them." Travis didn't hear the rest. His arms finally gave way and his body slipped beneath the waterline. There was no pain in that moment, only silence, a strange, numb peace. The screams above became faint echoes. The lake closed around him like a curtain, and in that quiet second beneath the surface he saw it. His dad sitting in the old lawn chair by the pool, arms crossed, nodding proudly, not saying anything, just being there. The surface broke again. Strong hands gripped Travis under the arms, hauling him up. One of the girls was already in another man's arms on the bank. The other clung to Travis's shoulder, coughing. The man dragging him was yelling something, but it all sounded distant, like underwater thunder. Travis blinked at the sky, gasping. The light was blinding, his chest felt caved in, but the crushing weight was gone. The girls were safe. He had done it. And as the cold began to recede from his limbs, replaced by warm hands and shouting voices, one thought remained steady: they're alive. And that, in this moment, was enough. The ringing in his ears refused to fade, even as Travis lay on the damp grass, coughing up lake water, his chest shuddering with every breath. The world around him spun as if he were still submerged. The sun, piercing through the canopy overhead, was too bright, too hot, but he welcomed it, for it meant he was still here, barely. His body trembled uncontrollably, soaked clothes clinging to his skin, muscles locked tight, especially in his legs. He couldn't move them, couldn't feel them, but that didn't matter. He turned his head slowly. Just a few feet away, one of the girls was wrapped in a towel, cradled in the arms of a woman, presumably a passerby. The other girl. Travis blinked hard. was being tended to by a man kneeling beside her, murmuring soft, frantic reassurances while gently pressing on her back to help her breathe. He was coughing, that was good. He was crying, even better. Travis tried to sit up, but the moment he lifted his shoulders, a lightning bolt of pain shot through his left side. He groaned. Someone placed a hand on his chest, firm but gentle. "Stay down, man." In shock. "You did enough. Don't move." The voice belonged to a jogger, maybe late 30s, white baseball cap soaked with sweat. "Ambulance is on the way. Just breathe, all right? You're good, you're good, you're good." Sounded so strange, almost foreign. Travis didn't know how to accept that, not when he'd spent the last few years being ignored, dismissed, stared at like a threat in spaces he once called home. It wasn't that long ago when a lifeguard at a city pool told him to watch himself, because parents complained he was intimidating the other swimmers. Never mind that he'd been on the junior national team. Never mind the medals gathering dust in a shoebox under his bed. One look at his skin and people saw danger, not discipline, not excellence, just difference. The thought stung deeper than the cold ever could. He clenched his teeth, trying to push it out of his mind, but it wouldn't leave. Even now, after dragging 2 children from a lake, some of the bystanders still looked at him with confusion in their eyes, as if they didn't quite know whether to say, "Thank you," or "Stay back." A siren wailed in the distance, growing closer with every second. "Hey!" a small voice croaked beside him. Travis blinked again. One of the girls, the one in the pink swimsuit with wet curls stuck to her cheeks, had crawled closer to him, still wrapped in the oversized towel. She stared at him wide-eyed, then whispered, "You saved us." Her voice was soft but certain, no fear in her eyes, just awe. Travis tried to smile, but the corners of his mouth barely moved. He managed a nod. I tried," he rasped, his voice cracking from strain. "You're okay, right?" The girl nodded solemnly, then leaned forward and did something no one expected. She reached out and gently touched his hand, the one that had held her head above the water minutes ago. He wanted to say more, something comforting, but his throat tightened, and all he could do was hold on to the feeling of her small fingers in his. The EMTs arrived moments later, storming onto the scene with kits and gurneys. Everything dissolved into a blur of movement and shouted instructions. 2 pediatric patients, responsive but water intake likely. Adult male, mid-20s, leg cramping, potential hypoxia. Travis heard it all without reacting. He was lifted onto a stretcher, the weightless moment making him dizzy. An oxygen mask over his face, a neck brace, tape against his skin. It was surreal, like watching it happen to someone else. But the fear had passed. The adrenaline had passed. What remained was something quieter. He didn't know the word for it, but it sat heavy in his chest. Not pain, not pride, something in between. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics worked quickly. A young woman checked his pulse and administered warm saline through and for. She smiled gently when their eyes met. "You saved their lives," she said. "I almost didn't make it," Travis whispered, ashamed. I couldn't keep us all up." "But you did. You did," she repeated, firmer now. "You kept them breathing. That's what matters." Travis turned his face away, hiding the sudden welling in his eyes. The ride was short, perhaps 10 minutes, but in that time he replayed it all. The moment he saw the ball, the sinking shapes, the silence underwater, the cramp, and worse, he saw himself going under. He remembered the calm just before losing consciousness. He had accepted it in that moment. Some part of him believed he was going to die, and he was okay with it, not because he wanted to die but because those girls would live. That was worth it. When the ambulance pulled up at the hospital and the doors opened to bright white light and hurried footsteps, Travis didn't feel like a hero. He felt empty, spent, as if he'd poured every part of himself into that lake. As they wheeled him in, the last thing he saw before the automatic doors swallowed him was the twin girls being held tight by nurses. Safe, alive. It wasn't until he was inside the ER, under a warm blanket and dry clothes, that the trembling stopped. His legs still ached, but the worst had passed. Nurses buzzed around, murmuring kind things, but his mind wandered back to the water, back to his dad's voice calling instructions from the pool deck. "Shoulders back. Lead with your hands. Don't fight the current, feel it." He hadn't thought about that voice in so long, not since the funeral. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he wasn't trying to escape the memory. He let it stay, let it carry him. Somewhere in the hallway, a child laughed, Then another voice, deeper, louder, distressed, rose and shattered the quiet. Where are they? Where are my daughters? Travis's eyes opened slowly. Something was coming and it wouldn't be simple. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor cast a sterile, pale hue over everything, yet the tension that entered with the heavy footsteps of the man down the hall shattered that stillness like glass. Where are they? My girls? Where are they? The voice was hoarse, panicked, the kind of desperation that couldn't be faked. Nurses turned towards the sound, trying to calm him, pointing towards the pediatric wing. Travis heard it all from his room, the door slightly ajar, a curtain shielding him from the world but not its echoes. He knew that voice. He didn't remember the man's name, he hadn't even heard it, but that tone, that accent, that specific cadence, it belonged to the man with the picnic blanket, the man who had packed up his daughters and walked away from Travis without a word. Travis sat up slowly, wincing as his body reminded him of every second he'd spent holding those girls above water. The nurse had told him he didn't have to stay in bed. She'd said he could leave whenever he felt strong enough. But suddenly, leaving was the last thing on his mind. Outside the curtain, voices clashed. Doctors giving updates, the man's voice rising and falling like waves crashing against walls. Then a pause. Then footsteps, closer, measured, heavy. The curtain was pushed aside and there he was. The same man but not the same. His crisp polo shirt was wrinkled, his khaki shorts damp at the hem, his hair wind-tossed. His face, so composed earlier in the park, was now flushed, eyes red-rimmed, jaw clenched tight as if holding back the weight of something unbearable. He stared at Travis, didn't speak for a long time. Neither of them did. Then the man stepped forward and sank to one knee. I didn't know, his voice broke. I went to get them lunch. Burgers. Fries. Nothing fancy. I wasn't gone more than 10 minutes. 10 minutes. He looked up and in that moment, every ounce of pride, superiority, control was gone. They said you were the only one who saw them. The only one who jumped in. Travis didn't answer right away. He didn't know what to say to a man who had only hours earlier gathered his children and left the park because he didn't like the way a black man had looked at his daughters. He didn't know how to respond to eyes that had once judged him, now staring at him with raw, unfiltered gratitude. I almost didn't make it, Travis said quietly, his voice coarse but steady. I didn't think I'd get all the way back. The man swallowed hard, his eyes falling to the hospital floor. You did more than I could have. More than I deserved. Hell, I wasn't even there. They needed someone, Travis added, and they were just falling. I've never been more ashamed in my life, the man murmured, his voice shaking. Not because you saved them but because when I saw you watching them earlier I thought you were trouble. I thought maybe you were going to try something and I pulled them away from you, from someone who ended up being the one person who actually saw them. Travis looked down at his own hands, calloused, worn from training, strong enough to carry 2 lives out of the water, and still somehow always questioned. You're not the first, he said, not bitterly, just truthfully. People see me and make up their minds. I'm used to it. But you shouldn't have to be, the man said, rising slowly. You shouldn't have to expect that. Not after what you did. Not after today. He paused for a beat, then extended his hand. Travis stared at it. The man's fingers trembled slightly, his palm open, waiting. Travis reached out slowly, hesitantly, and as their hands met, the man pulled him into a sudden, fierce embrace. No fanfare, no speeches, just a grip so tight it shook him. His voice cracked beside Travis's ear. Thank you. Thank you for not hesitating. Thank you for giving me another chance to be a father. Travis didn't return the hug immediately, but his body didn't resist either. The warmth of that grip, the weight of the man's remorse, it hit him somewhere deeper than pain. For a moment, his throat locked up again, not from water this time, but from the emotion clawing its way out of his chest. The door opened behind them. One of the twin girls peeked in, her hand clutched around the edge of the frame. Her hair was still damp, her little hospital gown too big for her frame. She stepped inside quietly, walked over and tugged on the man's shirt. Daddy, she whispered, he's okay. The man let go of Travis, turned and bent to his daughter's level. Yeah, baby, he's more than okay. He's our hero. He glanced back at Travis with a look that carried more than just gratitude. It held a kind of reverence, a kind of reckoning. The girl stepped closer to Travis, climbed into the chair beside his bed, and laid her hand over his again. "You weren't scared," she said softly, "even when the water was big." Travis smiled, truly smiled for the first time all day. "I was scared," he said gently, "but I couldn't let it stop me." She leaned against his side without hesitation. Her father stood silently, watching this moment unfold like he was witnessing something sacred. After a while he spoke again. "My name's Grant Merrick," he said. "I run Merrick Athletics. You probably haven't heard of us. Swimwear, training tech, all that." His voice regained a sliver of control, though the emotion still clung to every word. "I've sponsored dozens of athletes, but I never met one who did what you did. Without cameras. Without a medal waiting at the end. Just heart. Just instinct." Travis raised an eyebrow. "You're that Merrick?" Grant nodded. "Yeah. And I've got some people I want you to meet once you're out of here. That is, if you're still willing to swim." Travis's breath caught. It wasn't a promise, not yet, but it was a door, one that had been slammed shut years ago, now slightly, cautiously open. He didn't answer right away. He looked at the girl beside him, at the man before him, at the place where pain and prejudice had been met not with fury, but with quiet courage. And in that silence something shifted. Not everything, but something important. He nodded once. "I'm willing." The sound of applause echoed like a wave breaking against the walls of the town's new aquatic center. Bright overhead lights shimmered across the polished tile and glinted off the glass surface of the Olympic-sized pool. It was the first facility of its kind in the county, state-of-the-art, publicly accessible, and most notably, built in a neighborhood that had never known such investment. The bold blue lettering above the entrance declared, "The Travis Bennett Community Aquatic Center." And beneath it, etched into a steel plaque, were the words, "Courage isn't found in competition, it's found in sacrifice." Travis stood on the podium, not in swim gear, not in competition whites, but in a crisp button-down shirt and dark slacks. His shoes still felt strange on the tile beneath him. He'd spent so many years barefoot around pools, yet somehow this felt more official, more grounded. The mayor had just finished her speech. The crowd, residents, city officials, coaches, kids in swim caps, rose to their feet in one collective gesture of recognition, not just for what Travis had done that day at the lake, but for everything he had quietly endured before. He stood at the microphone, paused, took in the sea of faces. Somewhere near the front row sat Grant Merrick, hands folded, a proud smile breaking through the formal stiffness of his suit. And beside him, in matching dresses and high ponytails, were the twin girls, swinging their feet, waving at Travis with unfiltered joy. One of them blew him a kiss. He felt his throat tighten, but this time he let it. "I never expected this," Travis began, his voice steady but thick with the weight of everything that led to this moment. "When I was younger, I thought my future in swimming ended the day I walked away from the national team tryouts. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the support. And when my father got sick, I chose family over medals. I thought that meant the dream was over." A silence fell over the room, respectful and full. "But that lake changed everything," he continued. "Not because I saved someone, but because for the first time in a long time someone saw me, really saw me. Not the color of my skin. Not a threat. Not a stereotype. Just a man doing what he was trained to do, what he loved to do." He glanced at Grant, who nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I used to think that being excellent would be enough," Travis said. "That if I swam fast enough, won enough, smiled enough, people would stop looking at me like I didn't belong. But the truth is, excellence doesn't change hearts. Moments do. And sometimes those moments come when you're not ready. When it hurts. When you're scared. But you act anyway." He looked toward the girls, now catching their eyes. "I didn't save them to prove anything. I saved them because I could. And that's what matters, that we all can, no matter who's watching." The applause returned, louder this time, rising like a tide. Travis stepped back from the microphone as the mayor approached again, handing him a ceremonial key to the building. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned forward, but Travis barely noticed. What anchored him in that moment wasn't the honor. It was the little hand that slipped into his. One of the twins had run up, wrapping her arms around his waist. She looked up, beaming. "You're going to teach me to swim, right?" Travis chuckled, blinking back something that wasn't quite tears. "Yeah," he said, crouching to her level. "I am." From that day forward, Travis was more than a name on a plaque. He became a mentor, a coach, a figure that kids in the community, especially Black kids, could look up to and believe maybe this world has room for me too. He worked with Grant to design accessible training programs, outreach to underfunded schools, and initiatives to break the invisible wall that had always kept certain kids away from the water. Months passed and the aquatic center thrived. Travis could often be found in the early hours, diving into the cool morning water, slicing through the stillness with quiet power. The pool didn't ask who he was. It never had. It just received him. And now so did the world. One evening as he walked out after practice, the air golden with the late summer sun, Grant stood waiting by the benches, hands in his pockets. "You know," Grant said, "this place, it's better than anything my company's ever sponsored and I've backed champions." Travis smiled. "Champions don't always come with medals." Grant nodded. "And heroes don't always wear capes." They stood in silence for a while, watching as a line of kids ran along the edge of the pool, laughing uninhibited. One of them shouted, "Coach Travis, watch me do a cannonball." He waved, laughing, "Make it big." Grant turned to leave, then paused. "You never told me what your dad would have thought of all this." Travis looked up at the building, then at the water beyond. "He'd be proud," he said. "But he'd probably just say, 'Good. Now go help the next kid.'" And that's exactly what Travis did, day after day, stroke after stroke. Not chasing glory but passing it on, because sometimes the most powerful legacy starts with a moment no one saw coming and ends with a whole town standing taller together. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.